Hello, everybody. Welcome to another video. Today, I am reacting to the death of the icon of the legend, Ozzy Osbourne. He passed away at the age of 76, and today I am reacting to a video by CBS News that talks about Ozzy Osbourne, his passing, and talks a bit about his legacy. And I'm actually a big fan of Black Sabbath. Hearing that Ozzy Osbourne passed away was like, I don't want to say it was a shock necessarily, but I was kind of like, oh wow, it happened. Ozzy Osbourne has passed away. I actually have right here some records that I have of Black Sabbath. This is their Masters of Reality. I got this for like $10. And here's Volume 4. That record. This was new. But I bought this one used. You know, I like a lot of the old classic rock and roll. Obviously Black Sabbath, that's like the original heavy metal band, as far as I know. And so today I just want to react to this video talking about the legacy of Ozzy Osbourne, because that's what we do here at the Your Legacy podcast. We're big on celebrating the legacies of icons who have influenced culture. So let's go ahead and take a look at what they have to say here.
Osbourne's family released this statement you see there. It is with more sadness than mere words can convey that we have to report that our beloved Ozzy Osbourne has passed away this morning. He was with his family and surrounded by love. Joining us now for more on this is Joe Levy. He's a contributor for the Rolling Stone magazine. Thank you so much for joining us. What more can you tell us about the life and legacy of Ozzy Osbourne? A lot of people, like myself, got to know him through 2002, 2005 on The Osbourne Show, which was one of the most watched shows on MTV at the time. But tell us more about his history and why he is so revered.
The Osbournes was such a strange moment in his career because there he was as a family man in something like a reality sitcom with his wife, the tempestuous manager Sharon Osbourne, and two of their children. But before that, we knew him as one of the pioneers of heavy metal with Black Sabbath and on his own. The self-proclaimed Prince of Darkness, not a family man at all, but a tempestuous rock star who struggled mightily with substance abuse and who was legendary for his misbehavior. There is a famous incident where he may or may not, and in fact, he did, tear the head off of a live bird during a record company meeting.
Yeah, they have those crazy like Ozzy Osbourne stories. Like there's the famous story of him at a concert where someone throws a fake bat on stage and he thinks it was actually a real bat, but he thought it was a fake bat and he bites the head off of a bat with the idea that it's fake. But like, like the image and the story that's always going to be told about Ozzy Osbourne, that's like one of the stories where it's like, hey, yeah, Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off of a bat on stage, and it kind of just feeds into the lore of his performances and his personality as like the Prince of Darkness, and just the whole heavy metal aura and aesthetic that he had while he was alive making the music that he was making.
The mayhem he described in his songs, he sometimes acted out, is my point.
And that's also part of the reason why, like I said, I wasn't too shocked to hear that he passed, because, I mean, yeah, he did struggle a lot with substance abuse. And unfortunately, when someone struggles as much with substance abuse as Ozzy did, you might imagine that they pass sooner than he actually did. He lived a long life of 76 years, which is great. And so, you could have thought he might have even passed earlier. So it's good that he was able to live a longer life and be there and spend time with his family the way that he did. And as they mentioned, they talked about his show that he had, which, I didn't really ever care about the show. I would see like little clips of it here and there years and years ago, and they're always like cursing on the show, and Ozzy Osbourne's kind of like mumbling around a bit, on the show. But he also was able to extend his career to extend his, I guess you could say, his place in popular culture, because he went from being the iconic rock and roll star, with Black Sabbath, but also on a solo level in his own right. And he's also then able to go and become a reality TV star, where it's like, hey, yeah, you see me on stage, you see me give these legendary performances, you see me create this legendary music. But there's a lot that happens behind the scenes too. And this is how my family life is. And some of those shows, what they do is they take someone who it's like, oh, rock and roll icon, and they kind of show you that this is a human being. It's a person with a family and with everyday issues just like you and me, right? It's always important to remember that when we talk about these icons and their legacy, these are the legacies of human beings. They're just like you and me, despite all of the fame and fortune and attention that they get in the media. And so Ozzy Osbourne was someone who was definitely able to make an impact in music, but then he was also to be, he was able to bring that human element with that TV show. Like the woman at the beginning of the video said, that's how she knew him, right? Someone who maybe doesn't really listen to heavy metal and rock and roll like that might be able to connect with him in that way. So he was able to use that show to connect with more people within culture.
But then MTV gives us the Osbournes. And when you got to know him, he was a loving family man.
What do you think made him such a cultural icon? Because, these people that come along that we'll be talking about for generations and generations, outside of sort of setting the tone for heavy metal, wearing the makeup, living his life out loud. But also, I feel like in watching his family, you saw a real family, a lot of love, and someone that was obviously very talented and always wanted to be connected to that part of him who was this heavy metal artist.
I agree. And that moment with the Osbournes was sort of a second, maybe third career for Ozzy. What made him famous at first was the music he made with Black Sabbath. Mm-hmm. It was dark, it was tempestuous, it was sludgy. It was right at the start of the 1970s, 1970, in fact. It was not so popular with critics like myself.
Yeah, that Black Sabbath music, man, that first album, I loved that song, The Wizard. There were so many great songs. That's probably my favorite Black Sabbath song, along with maybe Iron Man. They just had that gritty, dark, they innovated that kind of sound. Obviously, you had a band like Led Zeppelin who came before them, who with, that classic rock and roll, they made that impact with the guitar riffs and things of that nature. But Black Sabbath kind of innovated off of that sound with a more dark, maybe for lack of a better word, creepy kind of sound, like that darkness to it. They came in and they just, came up with that own sound themselves. And that's just how it works in culture. You are inspired by those who come before you and you create based on that. And when we talk about, his style of play, his music, we all draw inspiration from the people who came before us and we tweak it a bit, right? For example, there is video of Ozzy Osbourne talking about how he was influenced so strongly by the Beatles. He said that he didn't know what he wanted to do in his life, but then he heard the Beatles. He heard the song, She Loves You, one of the first Beatles songs. And he said that when he heard that song, he officially knew what he wanted to do with his life. He wanted to be a musician. He wanted to be a rock star, right? And to him, John Lennon and Paul McCartney were the biggest things in the world, right? And so, if you don't have the Beatles, you don't have Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath, right? And there are bands and musicians who have been inspired by Ozzy Osbourne, who have been inspired by Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath, and that is the continued inspiration that generations of musicians feed into one another, right? The same way that there would have been no Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath without the Beatles, there are other bands, they wouldn't have existed if there wasn't Ozzy and Black Sabbath. So it's just that intergenerational inspiration that feeds into culture and the creativity that comes from culture.
But it was awfully popular with kids. And I should say, I was a kid at the time, I should know. And that music was so dark and doomy, and it partook of all of the signs and symbols of horror movies, really in order to tell a certain kind of truth about the way that kids felt. It was a very silly kind of music in certain ways, and Ozzy was the first one to admit it, or the trappings were a little silly. But the music had a deep, dark power to it and a kind of truth to it. And then with the Osbournes, as you say, we got to know a personal side of Ozzy, a very vulnerable guy, a bit addled or addled seeming, but a loving guy who had trouble disciplining his kids.
Right.
You know, it was a sort of play on old sitcoms that were ancient when I was watching TV in the 70s, things like Father Knows Best or Ozzy and Harriet, except it was these misbehaving rock stars who were raised kids.
And that's what I think is so special at the core, that family, like only they get it. And they were all super protective of each other, I think, in terms of what we did see on screen. Ozzy Osbourne, as you know, was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2006, shortly after that show aired. But then there was a...
And well-deserved, because he was a legendary artist. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that's just, you know, a collection of legacies. It's a collection of musicians who have left an impact in the music that they have provided society, the legacy of the music that they give to us that, you know, we pass down to future generations. And so obviously it's well deserved for Ozzy Osbourne because he was a legend, a very innovative figure.
Decline of his health. He acknowledged that he had Parkinson's. He was in an accident. And the fact that he was even performing not that long ago was a really, really big deal. So just talk to us about those events leading up to his passing.
Absolutely. It's important to remember that leading up to that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, Ozzy had his own festival called Ozfest. He was so big in the world of heavy metal that you could organize a touring festival just around him. And
that's how influential he was. He had an entire fest dedicated to him, Ozfest, right? People just wanted to see him that bad, and you could market an entire festival based on Ozzy Osbourne.
It is also true that he did have that accident. I believe he was riding an ATV and was severely injured when he crashed it. I believe his son was with him at the time. If I remember correctly, he had to retire from the road for a bit. But Ozzy was someone who lived hard, rocked hard, and retired over and over again, starting, I think, first in the 90s. He retired at least 2 times, kept coming back. And the fact that his Parkinson's diagnosis kept him from performing made it all the more amazing that just 2 weeks ago, he took the stage for what absolutely would be the final time. This was no joke, even had his demise not come so quickly upon it. It was clear he had to be carried out in a black throne, that he would not keep performing. Yet there he was at this Back to the Beginning concert, performing with Black Sabbath, right back to the start of it all, one last time.
That is amazing that they, as a band, were able to have that last performance. Like, what a way to go out at the end of what has been such an illustrious and inspiring career. To be able to have that last performance is something that fans can surely cherish, and I know he probably cherished knowing this is like my last go. It's great to have that bow wrap on the top of the present, just to have that kind of finish, that finale to his career.
Could not be stopped.
He could not be stopped, exactly. Joe Levy, we thank you so much for your time and just sharing.
And we thank you, Ozzy Osbourne, for the career that you have left behind, for the music that you have left behind. One of my favorite bands all time, Black Sabbath. You know, we are always going to make sure that we cherish the legacy of this artist. Rest in peace to Ozzy Osbourne. Still crazy to think that he's gone, that his career is officially over, and you know, the legacy continues to live on. There are going to be many future artists who draw inspiration from his work. And so I just wanted to make this video really quickly to commemorate the life and the legacy of Ozzy Osbourne. So, were you a fan of Black Sabbath, a fan of Ozzy Osbourne? If you were, let me know in the comments section. Let me know what your favorite Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne song is. If you like this video, make sure that you give it a like. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel to get more content that we'll be making. And I will see you all next time. Rest in peace, Ozzy Osbourne.